Hey friends, welcome to Living the KG Life, a pixie dust-filled podcast. On today's episode, we have Kristen joining us, who's going to be talking all about Run Disney. So stick around, it's going to be great. All right, Kristen, I am so excited to be chatting Run Disney with you today. I love that you have your Run Disney jacket on. I wore my virtual wine and dine shirt, so we are ready to talk Run Disney. If you haven't had a chance yet to listen to the other episode that we have with Kristen, make sure you take a listen to that. Kristen is an expert on all things Disney, but especially DVC and Run Disney are the two that I feel like I could listen to you talk about those two things all day long. So why don't you give everyone kind of like a quick intro, tell us who you are, and then let's start this one with how you got started running Disney.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm Kristen. I'm just going to get right into Disney. Run Disney. I started Run Disney. Let's put it this way. I started my passion for Run Disney probably about, I would say 2013, 2014, maybe. And I actually signed up to do a Run Disney race. And it was always a bucket to do Run Disney. And I signed up to do the Wine and Dine challenge. And I actually got Mike to sign up for it with me. And this is going to sound crazy, but I was so injured from some previous injuries that I couldn't run it. So we didn't go.
Oh no.
And you know how like when you register for Run Disney, like you can say, add this to bag, or you can just keep going to checkout. So I was like, oh yes, it's gonna be the first one. Let's get a pin. Let's do this. Yes. So, well, we didn't go. And we got the pins in the mail. And Mike's like, hey, he's like, here's our pins from the race we didn't run. Do we still get to keep them? It was so great. I was like, oh, I love it. So we still have the pins. So got through and learned just kind of how to work through some things with my legs. So a little history on my running. I have been running since I was young, since I was in middle school. Then I ran through high school, cross country, track, all of that. And then even when I was in the Air Force, I ran and joined like the running team in the military. So I have always been into running, but I think running, the education out there now is so much more advanced than it was when I was running as a youth, because when I ran when I was little, it was pretty much just the instructions of run hard, run fast, stride those legs, one in front of the other as far as you can. If you're long-legged, like it was just all that emphasis that I felt like caused a lot of my injuries. I'm very much of a rule follower. So if you tell me to do, I'm going to do. But when you pound the pavement in that form without really being taught what strength that you need in your musculoskeletal system and how to land on the pavement, how to have that right shoe for your arch, they can lead to those injuries. So anyway, so I took some time to learn all about that. And then finally in 2019, I ran my first Run Disney race. I ran my first half marathon about 3 weeks prior, local in North Carolina. And I literally signed up for Run Disney for Star Wars half marathon, I want to say Tuesday before the race.
What? Oh my gosh.
It was a Tuesday and it was still open. So I signed up for it, booked a plane ticket to come in on Friday and ran it on Sunday.
Oh my gosh, that is wild.
So yeah, that was my first one. And that was probably the best because there was no planning, because I had so much heart and so much excitement. And then there was so much like grief from not running. And yes, I know I paid for those Run Disney races and we didn't go, but there was so much from that it was probably best that it happened this way, because it was like literally boom, click registration, boom, got on a plane and I was at the start line and I was at the finish line and it was great.
I love it. Now, I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast yet, but I had very different reason. But I also missed the very first Run Disney race that I had signed up for.
Stop!
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
It was actually Princess 2019, but we missed the 5K because we drank around the world the night before. So, and we were like, we've done plenty of 5Ks hungover. We'll be fine. And we woke up, we were like, oh no. Nope. We'll see them for the 10K tomorrow. We're going back to bed. It's a very different reason why we missed the first race, but I feel you, because the next morning I was like, I have to go. I cannot miss 2 races for any reason. I have to do it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that we share that.
Yes. Yes. And also put it out there for everyone, regardless of what happens, you can miss a race. It is okay.
It is okay.
You'll make it.
is
There's more, and you're
Yep.
going to love them.
And they will be back, as we have
Yes.
learned.
Yes. Now, what do you think it was that made you fall in love with the race weekends? I think something people don't realize, it's not just a race like, you know, your hometown type race where it's like you go, it's a couple hours and you're done. It is a full race weekend, and there's so much to it. So what do you think it is that really got you to say, like, I want to keep doing these race weekends?
You know, I have done races outside of Disney, and I did many 5Ks and had done my first half marathon, was not with Disney. And I think that was also helpful for my first, to just kind of get me through those half marathon jitters in Disney. Every one of them has an expo, whether it's a 5K or a marathon, everything in between. They all have expos. There's people out on the course cheering you on in different spots. There's locals that come out. But when I was there for Star Wars weekend and I ran that half marathon, it is a whole different, it's another bubble. You come into that ESPN expo and you already feel like you have been hyped up for the biggest event in the world.
Yes.
Whether it's the 5K or it's marathon weekend and you're doing all of it, you feel like you are walking into something that is so magnanimous for your journey. It's like, oh my gosh, you just keep wanting to pull that string to keep on going and lead me to it and follow the water, you know, where's like horse goes to water. That's exactly like lead me to more, because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, from the expo to the way they start those races, that camaraderie of everybody showing up to those corrals super early. There is something about the way they do the start line and the fireworks.
Yep.
I mean, where else do you get that? And just all along the course and then the finish. It's the little traditions that they have, the nuances that they have, and it's all the way it's all intertwined together.
I love it. What you said in the beginning too, of like how special they make every race feel at the expo. I never really thought about it that way, because a lot of people will say that RunDisney, if that's your first race, it's a great first race for any distance. And it's so true with what you just said of, you could walk into an expo and say, well, I'm just doing a 5K. But Disney's like, you're doing a 5K. Like, they're going to hype you up just as much as if you're doing your first or your 100th marathon. And that's, like you said, something really special that a lot of other places don't do, and that a lot of places can't do like Disney does. And that's something we talk about a lot on the podcast, just like a lot of places just don't do it like Disney. And the expo and things like that is definitely one of them for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, where else do you go to where the music is so loud that you can hear as you're exiting the bus, if you're taking bus or if you're driving yourself to the ESPN Sports Center? Like, yep. It is so, you just already feel like, wow, this is huge.
Where else can you have, you know, Cinderella's horsemen walk you down a red carpet to go in to find some beautiful merch?
This beautiful merch. Where do you get to actually stand next to the glass slipper with the pillow with the horse? You know, how about that? When that was February 2020, like that was amazing. I'm like, what? Like, the experiences that you wouldn't get otherwise happen in RunDisney. So
absolutely.
Even for those that don't want to run or like hear the word running and just cringe, you don't have to run. You can walk these. You can just experience, and you see a lot of that. Once you get out on the course, you realize, oh, I could do this. Okay, I'm not alone. Like, I don't have to be this natural elite runner, and I don't have to be this regular runner. I can just come and enjoy this experience for what it is and have such a great time. And they get this beautiful medal at the end.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could also talk about medals for hours.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. Now, you said a word that I think is really important, which is traditions. RunDisney has some traditions, but are there any traditions or must-dos or like favorites that you have when you go down for your RunDisney weekends?
Honestly, like Disney restaurants are, they are really good. So I love booking all of like my carb loading restaurants for RunDisney weekend. Like, I love being able to eat at some of these places that I probably like, just the things I choose for my diet when I'm at home or when I'm in training. But when it comes to RunDisney weekend, those are the things I look forward to, is like massive carb loading, carb loading in the finest way. And then the indulgement after the races like makes me so happy, whether it's the cheese fries from Casey's or my cake pops that I go after.
I love it. And I won't ask you what your favorites are for those, because we'll save those for our little speed round of favorites at the end, because I definitely want to hear about some of those specifics. What are some things that you've just learned over time work really well for you? So we know you love to go and find the good places and carb load. What are some other things that you just are like, this is what works really well for me, and it's kind of like in my to-do or have to do checklist?
I would say I'd love to make my way around the expo just to kind of make sure I have all that I need as far as like taping, nutrition, just to get a scan of making sure I have all that I need. Usually I'm prepped pretty well as far as when I come down for my gear, my RunDisney gear.
Yep.
And you don't always necessarily need those things, but I am definitely like one that likes to be prepared and have it and not need it. It's supposed to need it and not have it. So just to kind of look and see what's going on with those things.
That's actually a good one. Are there some things that you've learned that you always would rather make sure you have, even if you don't necessarily need it?
Nutrition packs.
Do you have a favorite type of nutrition pack that you bring with you?
I do. I have, I can never pronounce it properly. It's MUIR is what I like.
Okay.
It's a little bit thicker of a consistency. Goo, I guess, is the language for it, goo or gels.
Yep.
I like to bring those because RunDisney on half marathons, unless there's really, especially for half marathon, there's really just one nutrition stop. And I believe that's at between mile 8 and 9.
And they have like little like jelly, they have like the little jelly bean things, right?
Yeah. So they did. But this last time they had the honey stingers. So it was a different one. So one of the big tips with running is do what you've done before. Don't try anything new on your course because the GI health is so important when you're running because your gut sort of slows down. So you don't want to shock it on run day.
That is my biggest fear.
I will
say it on this podcast.
On gut nutrition.
I will say it. I'm afraid to poop my pants.
Oh my gosh. And listen, that has happened to people. If you ever look on like marathon runners and all those things that they've been through, it's like, do not test the waters on race day. Yep. So go prepared. So if you have one of those metabolisms that's constantly talking to you, make sure you have your nutrition. And, they also provide, I like to get taped or I tape myself, but they have the KT tape stand, but the line can tend to get a little bit long at times, just depending what time you head to the expo. But when you buy a roll of KT tape, they will gladly tape you and get you prepared as well, which
at the expo.
Yeah, you have to buy at the expo. You have to buy the tape, but they will tape you up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is nice. You just tell them kind of like what you're looking for, what kind of support you need, and they will apply it. So if you have that time for the expo, take advantage of that. So, but if you don't, you can always still buy the tape, throw up a YouTube video and type in specifically what you need support, and they'll do a little demo for you so you can feel that support. But those are huge. Even if you don't feel like you need the support, it doesn't hurt. KT tape is such a stabilizer for your legs.
Yeah, that's great.
Shins, ankles, knees.
And that's so good to know. If that's something that, obviously, like Kristen said, try everything out before on your training runs before you get to a race day. But if it like you want to make sure that you get taped by a pro, that's awesome that they can do it for you right at the expo. That's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's a nice little treat. Again, allow yourself that time because that deadline does tend to be a little bit long, but
yeah, if
you have it, and the expo is multiple days too. So if you're doing multiple races, you can get taped and that can last you the entire time, or you can decide to wait another expo day and get taped then. So there's definitely some flexibility with that.
That's awesome. Now, we are going to be talking in a little bit about Marthon Weekend and dopey training and all of that, which is so exciting. But let's talk a little bit about the clothing choices in terms of preparation for Marthon Weekend. I have not done Marthon Weekend yet, but I've heard the weather is like all over the map.
True story.
So how do you prepare, especially if you're doing dopey, so you're doing all 4 races in the weekend, how do you prepare for something like that? 4 days of races, you never know if you're going to have rain, heat, cold. What's your best way to kind of plan and prep for that?
That's so great because I feel like I've experienced the prep and still miss things. And so this last one for Wine and Dine, I was like, oh, okay, Orlando weather, you just don't know what's going to come at you because those corrals were pretty cold this time and it wasn't projected to be that way. That's one thing too, the races, you see so many beautiful costumes along the way. Yes. There's so many inventive and creative ideas. And I love it. There's the skirts, there's the actual full-blown character costumes. There's such a gamut. And there's people who are simply in what they would run in a non-RunDisney race too. Yep. I think first you've got to be comfortable. And even if you choose a costume, just make sure you're comfortable in it. And if you're not that comfortable, but are having such a good time going into it with that mindset of like, this doesn't feel the best on my body while I run, but my goal isn't that. My goal is to just bring entertainment, have such a good time. So choosing what's best for you. So for me personally, I will always run in leggings, and I usually do like a sleeveless tank top that has some sort of cricket theme on there. But I always bring long sleeves to put under my tank tops and a hat And some of the long sleeves I have are thermal or like they're Columbia to where they do the wicking from the rain. So that has been helpful. But like if I know it's going to rain and I watch it, I throw a hat on, and that makes a huge difference because you can see a lot better when you have that hat kind of blocking the raindrops from your eyes. And what's nice is you can always just take those things and you can just wrap them around your waist. But that has helped.
That's great. And one of the things that I had not thought of before, so I've only done 2 in-person RunDisney weekends. It was 2019 and 2020 Princess. And 2020, I want to say it was the 5K. I think it was the morning that it rained.
It's cold.
It was cold and it was rainy, and it wasn't like a downpour. It was like that, like a little bit heavier than a mist, but not like a full rain. And I was like, oh my gosh, if it rains anymore, I was like, my sneakers are going to be soaked, and I have 2 more races to do. I hope they'll dry out in time. And so for this upcoming Princess, I actually just bought a second pair of the same exact running sneakers, and I'm going to break both pairs in and bring them both, because I was like, I literally, when I got home, I was like panicked. Like if it really rained, I would have been screwed and not been able to probably run the next day if it was like one of those Florida downpours. So even thinking about that too, like if you're going to do a whole weekend all the way down to your shoes, like make sure you have enough to get you through the whole weekend, or even have options. Like I normally would bring like 1 pair of sneakers and like run in them, walk around the parks in them. So if those are going to be the same, if it rained during the park day or at night, they're probably not going to be dry, like you said, to get on a 3:00 in the morning bus. I'm like stressing about it, just thinking about it right now. I'm like, I have to really go for a run and break in those new sneakers.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, you're so right about that, because I do usually bring 2 pairs of sneakers, but I also bring, like I have sneakers for short runs and longer runs just to keep the tread to last longer, to basically for specific arch support for however long I'm running. So it's definitely important to have that, and multiple pairs of socks too, even if you want to carry them. And a lot of my leggings that I wear, my capris, I make sure I have pockets on both sides. Now they do sell things that you can put like around waist belts and things that you can stick things in, but I like to have those pockets for my phone and for my gel and things like that. So that way I'm prepared on the race. But yes, sneakers, socks, the gel that goes on to help prevent chafing.
Oh, Body Glide.
Body Glide, yes. Some people could really benefit from
10 out of 10
thinking about that.
Yes, recommend all day long. Body Glide is incredible. And they also have a foot one that you can put on like your heels or your toes if you tend to blister in certain areas when you run too. And like you were saying, if it is rainy a little bit and your socks and your shoes are starting to get wet, I don't know if it's called Foot Glide, but it's the same brand, Body Glide, that makes that too.
Yeah. So all those little things that are so helpful. And it does come with experience, because you sometimes like the best lessons are learned by trial and error. So, but these are a lot of things that I've learned along the way with, and like I said, even this last one, I still had to buy something because the weather wasn't projected to be the way it was. So I ended up at Columbia that weekend because it was really cold and it was really wet. So I bought like a waking shirt to go under my tank top and even just to kind of get you through the corrals. Yeah. So, because those corrals can be pretty chilly. Also bringing a throwaway, that's also something to put in your back pocket as far as when you're prepping for RunDisney. Go to a Goodwill, go to anywhere where they have things that you don't feel like, you're okay to spend $2 to $3 to throw away on the course, because those corrals can be really cold. Once you get warmed up and running, you can take it off and throw it out on the course, and they will come and sweep all of that up.
Yep. Did I read somewhere that Disney, I think, donates all the clothes that gets left on the course, right?
Yes, they donate all the clothes, and it's so great. Yeah. So, it's not exactly going like in the trash, but you're providing something for someone else.
I love that. If you had to think about the top things that someone comes to you and they say, Kristen, I know you run Disney a lot. What do I need to know? I'm thinking about doing my first one. What's like your go-to advice for some RunDisney new friends?
Really, I kind of put it back on them. Like, what is your goal? Like, what are you looking for? So, and just to kind of get an idea where their mindset is, so I can help them navigate what they're looking for in RunDisney. And so depending on what that is, first thing I tell them is like, great choice, because you're going to have the time of your life. You're going to have the time of your life. And if you're looking for a race to have the time of your life, first thing, take the pressure off, because it is so much fun and it's all about experience. A lot of races are time, pace, things like that, which it does follow as well in RunDisney, but it's just different. So enjoy that part of it when it comes to RunDisney.
I love that. And if you had to say or think back to your first RunDisney race, what was the part of the race itself that you were like, oh my God, this is it? this is amazing? Like, what was the on-course selling point for you?
So probably since it was the half marathon was my first one, probably it was all selling me because I'm easily sold in Disney.
We're all in.
Right. But I would probably say when it got, the characters were so fun along across the DJs. But when it got to the end, and you're going to get this in the 5K and the 10K because they're shortest, they're going to put you in the best parts of Walt Disney World. But so since it was the half marathon, it was at the end when you get to run through Hollywood Studios, Epcot, and finish in Epcot, like it's just so great to run the boardwalk, the showcase. Those moments right there just had me, because when you're in the parks generally as a ticket holder and you're going through and you're enjoying things and the crowd's there and you're enjoying the nighttime or you're there rope dropping, to see it in a different light and know it's yours. This is your time in the park. This is about you guys. I don't know. It just brings a different element, and it was just so magical. So that's what did it for me.
Now, do you stop for characters on the route?
Yes, I do. I stop for the ones that I don't get to see in the parks often.
Okay.
So I stop for the rare ones usually, or sometimes if the line is short, and I will jump in and grab one. It's hard because now they've changed it a little bit. It's more of kind of like you kind of grab your selfie or you jump in and go, depending on what, like on the, I can't remember, it was the 5K or the 10K on this last one. It was just kind of like you stood from a distance with the cast member and they would take your phone. So it's kind of nice because it keeps you going on the course.
Yep.
But they are pretty efficient with those lines once you get in them. I mean, they can look very intimidating and very long, but they do keep them going pretty well.
Because that's one of the things. So I've never stopped for a character photo in the race, in any of the race weekends that I've done, because I'm so afraid to get swept. And no, we'll talk about that at some point a little bit. I've always been so afraid, especially Princess 2020 was my very first half marathon ever. And I was like, I just want to get across the finish line. I can't even think about anything. I'm just going to keep going. But I feel like a lot of people have a strategy of how they like either bake in time or like make sure they feel comfortable to stop. So how do you work that into either like your training, or do you just kind of say like, as long as I'm at this pace, I feel good? Or like you said, I'm only going to stop if I see a certain character. Like, how do you make sure that you feel good mid-race to kind of like put a pin in the race for a moment?
So that's a really good question. Basically, just remembering when you've been training and you know your paces and you know you've been doing at home. RunDisney requires 16 minutes per mile for each mile on the course. So technically about 3.5 hours to run a half marathon, but depending on where you're at and you're running or walking or whatever, however it is from one foot to another to get to the start to the finish, as long as you're under that, you're looking at your cushion. So for me, I know that I have that cushion to stop if I want to, because I know I'm below the 16 minutes per mile, but just making sure you pay attention to that if you are borderline. I did watch someone who had their very first half marathon. It was the year I ran my first marathon in RunDisney, and she was running her first half marathon, and it was her 40th birthday. It was her 40th birthday celebration. And yeah, I was watching her on her stories and I could tell what was happening. I thought, oh my gosh, she's cutting it close. I could just sense it in her stories and watching, like, they have those mile markers on the course that tell you mile this, and it tells you the time. Now that time is a cumulative time. It is not your specific time when you're screenshotting that time for yourself or taking that selfie. But you can kind of tell based on where you're at in the course. And it was sad, sure enough, because she stopped for everything. Even though she had trained, she stopped for everything.
Yeah.
Those balloon ladies keep walking. They don't stop. So unfortunately, she did get picked up at mile 11.
So close too.
So close. And yeah, it was really hard. We live close to each other. I hardly see her, but we knew of each other and such. And she went back to her resort and she clocked the rest of the distance on her feet, on her watch. And then she felt like she could share her medal. So yeah. Just knowing, you just have to know what you're capable of, know what RunDisney's capable of, and know that the clock does not stop. It's cumulative, and those ladies from the back with those Mickey balloons do not stop. So, and your corral placement is huge. That will also allow you the idea of what you can stop for. Yeah. Because I've definitely felt that like, no, can't stop. I don't want to get caught. I don't want to get swept, especially Marthon Weekend in 2020. That was a little bit unique because of the weather. which also ranged, and that was an extreme. It was a lot of people that had gone out from like heat stroke.
Oh, that was the year it was really, really hot, right?
Like, yeah, it was 96 degrees and humidity. And they actually cut the course that year. They cut out a good chunk of the course. I think they cut out Blizzard Beach. We had just left Blizzard Beach. And as we were coming out and heading back on the course, we could see literally just kind of like this shift of volume of people come towards like in our direction of what was happening. And it was like literally bottlenecked completely of crowd for those last few miles, because they had to cut it down because they just didn't have like, they had like those swimming pools, those like little $5 plastic swimming pools.
Yeah.
They had those all along the course with huge sponges for people to grab and take to cool themselves off. Yes.
Holy crap. That's wild.
Yeah. But it's funny because the angle that I was at, I had this panic moment thinking that we were behind, but the angle that we were at, I realized it was still a few miles back, but because the way we could see them, like I could see the balloon ladies from the turn that we took to another turn that they were at. And I'm like, there they are, run. But then I realized,
those poor ladies.
Oh my gosh. And so I realized, oh my gosh, later, like, oh no, they were coming in at this, they were 5 miles behind us. We're okay. Yeah. But it was just the angle that we were at. So it is a for real fear, but I think if you can just stay confident and hold yourself and just know the way the time clock works, know your own pace, know what you're capable of, know where you are in the corral, how much cushion that gave you, and you have to pick and choose. If you don't have a lot of time to work with, you have to be particular with what you stop for. Because it's easy to want to get a picture of every monumental moment because it's so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and that all ties back to the very first thing that you said, which is know what your goal is, right? So if your goal is to like go and have fun, you don't care about your time, you're like, I just want to see some characters, take some pictures and cross the finish line, great. And if that's your plan, stick to it. It's funny, a lot of times I watch a lot of videos on YouTube from different creators and things like that. There are times where I've watched videos, I'm like, I did not see that on the course. That person was not there. I did not run by that. That wasn't a thing. I'm like, nope, that was the year that I was there. I was just always so focused on like, oh, that's cool. And like kept me entertained at the moment, but like, boom, completely gone out of my memory. And all I remember is like certain pieces and then crossing the finish line. Cause that was my whole goal, was like, get to the end. So knowing that like that might happen too, knowing that like whatever your goal is what you should try to really stick to, like Kristen said, is really important.
Yes. It's so important. And just going in, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better you're prepared.
Absolutely. Which brings us to a really important section, I guess, of this episode, which is training for RunDisney races. So you are in the middle of training because at the time of this recording, Marthon Weekend is coming up. It is a couple weeks away. How do you approach training individual races versus training for a challenge like Dopey?
So individual races, I think, are a whole different segment than training for a build race, like a challenge where it's one race after another. I think it's really important when you're training for an individual race, that is your one goal, and to find a training plan that works. And I do think that Jeff Galloway does such a wonderful job. If you have not heard of Jeff Galloway, download him, download his app, download a little bit to read about him on the RunDisney site. He has his training programs. They are such great training milestones to start with, from the 5K all the way to the half.
Absolutely.
And he also has them for the challenges as well. So I would look at that to help guide you. But I think when it comes to when you're doing the ones that are challenges where you have one race up, it's a matter of training your legs to handle the amount of volume day after day. So that way, when you train, it's basically you're working on tired legs. How do I build on tired legs without getting injured or hurt? Or how do I train for that without getting hurt or not putting my legs through shock? That way, when taper time comes, my legs are resting, recovering, getting ready, muscle rebuilding. So that way, when I show up for this challenge, my legs have done the work. I'm ready to go now, even though you don't feel like it, because it really feels like you're being quite, I wouldn't say the word is lazy, but you do. I felt like doing anything. I'm like, am I sure I'm going to be okay? But it really does all come out in the end. So if it's your first challenge, the goal of that is to basically work on legs that are tired. And again, Jeff Galloway's program keeps it so simple for you and makes it really easy. And he explains everything so well. And that's how I trained when I first started running. I downloaded his app, the 5K, the 10K, the Jeff Galloway, because he talks to you, tells you, okay, this is the way you should be breathing. Okay, now it's time to walk. How do you feel? You should be able to talk. Okay, I know you really feel like you probably want to do more, but we're going to stop here. Like, so it's such a great way to kind of coach you and feel like you're being coached right there on the spot and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
That's great. I didn't know he had an app for that. I just have seen like his, like the training plans, like the calendars and stuff that you can print out from the RunDisney website. So that's awesome.
I believe those apps are still there. It's been years since I've used them, but they were great because you can download your own music and such. It's great.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, are you the type that, because I feel like there's 2 camps on race weekend. Do you go and walk around the parks post race, or do you chill and hang out at your resort or other places?
So I do a little both.
Or does it depend?
I think it just definitely depends because I already had lots of, my friend and I have had lots of convo about what we're doing for Dopey Weekend. And we've tried to read a lot of people's different thoughts and opinions on how to handle Dopey Weekend. We feel like we have a little idea because we've done the 5, 10 and half. So, and I say this in quotes, just all we have to do is just add the marathon at the end. Only in Disney do you say that. So we feel like we have an idea of the way our legs are going to feel, but like we do a little bit. I mean, I think it's important to walk when you're doing challenges. You have to walk a little bit. You've got to keep your blood flow moving. But then I think it's also important to get back to your room, time your dinners early in the day, like at 3 or 4. So that way you are back in your room, you're settled, doing whatever prep you need to do for leg work. And then you can get to bed at a decent time for that 2 a.m. wake up call.
Yep. It's funny. 2020 Princess Weekend, I did the challenge. I actually did all 3 races. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, how did you even do the next race? And I was like, I actually feel like for me personally, walking around was helpful because I'm usually the type that whether it's the 100th 5K that I've done or a 10K, if I come home and sit and don't do anything, my legs will be like bricks for like 3 days. My legs, my back, I'm like falling apart over here. But I really feel like walking around the parks, at least for a little while, was helpful. And I was shocked by that. My brain couldn't wrap around the fact that like it was actually helping because I kept being like, all right, when am I going to be sore? When is it going to hurt? When am I going to be dying and ready to go back to the room? And I was like, I actually feel okay. But I'm also a little bit like, was that just like the adrenaline of the first time? And then I start to overthink it and then I get nervous.
No. So I definitely think adrenaline has a lot to do with it too. But you're moving so much lactic acid. So, and the key is to keep moving and keep moving. And one of the training facilities I go to is always about keep moving. And it's like, you do your workout, you're like, all right, I'm good for the day. But honestly, if you go and you sit, like if you have like a job that requires you to sit, you're going to get up later after that leg day workout and you're going to be stiff. But the more you keep moving, or when you come back the next day and say your next day is like a cardio day, or you could decide to go out for a run and you feel like your legs are heavy, you realize that after you've done that run, you feel so much better because you've moved that lactic acid. And that's why it's so important. Doesn't mean you have to exercise every single day, but whenever you do, just keep moving for a little bit so it does not build up and cause that pain and that stiffness.
So important. Now, how is your dopey training going? Give us the scoop.
It's a little bit surreal. Mentally, I think I'm ready. I'm excited. I've wanted to do this for a very long time. Signed up for this in 2020. We saw what happened. And I decided not to do it virtually because for me personally, I did not want to pay the money for that kind of experience. I know people have done it different ways. I just knew I did not want to do that on my own pavement, on my own roads, without all the fun trinkets that come with it. So I was like, I'm going to wait to do this. That keep you going. Exactly. I'm like, I'm going to wait to do this because I had done a virtual one in 2020, the Wine and Dine. When that got canceled, I decided to do virtual because I thought if Dopey doesn't get canceled, at least I've done this to prepare for the training. Like I have that in my training bucket. So I did that at home. I'm like, okay, so I won't do Dopey at home, but I'm glad I didn't because this year it's the 50th medals, which is so exciting. So I'm excited. It was meant to be. They look so pretty. They shimmer. They're so pretty. So I'm really excited because I feel like this has been a long time coming. I do have some things I'm working through with the training. I do have some injuries I'm trying to get through, but I will get through them and I will cross that finish line. So that's really my goal now, is to cross the finish line. My original goals I've had to put aside, and I'm okay with that because really I just want the 6 medals in my hand, but I just have to have a different mindset on how I get across because of the mechanics in my body. And it's kind of telling me a different story.
A little different than anticipated, but that's a really important mindset to have too, that things can happen as long as you're willing to adapt and be flexible and say, okay, my goal might be a little bit different now, but here's how I'm gonna get to it, or here's how I'm gonna get there. So how do you keep yourself motivated when something like the injuries and things that you're dealing with right now, how do you stay motivated to say, nope, my goal might have changed, but I really want to get to this goal now, or shift my focus?
When it comes to staying motivated, I think for one, you have to be internal. internally motivated. I think that's a huge factor, because at the end of the day, like, you can have all the support, you can have all of like the cheering and all of the people telling you can do this, but if you don't have it in your heart to do it, it's just not gonna happen. Like, whether it's not gonna happen emotionally, physically, mentally, it's just somewhere it's going to lag. So you have to be internally driven to make that happen, whatever your mindset is going to be. I know for me, I'm going to cross it. I'm going to do it.
You're going to do it. So it's going to be so great. I can't wait to see and cheer you on all via Insta.
Yes. Yes. So even my sports medicine person that I go and I see every week, you know, when I told him like, hey, I found this, so I'm going to work on this. He's like, oh my gosh, you are determined. I said, yes, I am. Like, I am one of those, if I set my mind to it, I'm going to do it. I like to do things well. I like to do things to the best of my ability. And so even if this is my 100 before of my goal is not going to be that anymore. So how can I make this? When I say 100, that is like your best, right?
Yeah.
So even if your best isn't what my best would have been 6 weeks ago, this is my new best. So how am I going to get to my new best? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to prep for this race this way. I'm going to do my training like the, you know, for example, with the Peloton and cycling, I'm going to do this kind of foam rolling. I'm going to do this kind of glute work, because that is my new best.
And what has been the biggest shift for you, both for dopey training in general, and then maybe now with your different 100, how has your training changed?
So my training has changed a lot in volume as far as physically what I'm doing. And I'm banking a lot on my wine and dine weekend that I ran, that 5, 10 and half. And that is a lot. That is my bucket in my muscles, in my muscle memory. So I'm banking a lot on that. I did do a little bit of long running after that. So I am honestly going to put a lot of faith in that. And a lot of faith in the fact that, you know, kind of long-term athlete, long-term cardio, long-term exercise will get me through. I don't know if it's like a mind manipulation. I'm really not sure, but I am just focusing on as much positive with reality, because I do have the reality in my head, and that's what I'm trying to be prepared for. And I'm owning the reality, but I'm holding on to a lot of the positive that I know is true to be true with your physical capabilities.
Yep, that's huge. And what are you most excited for, knowing that Dopey is 3 weeks away? Or at this time when the episode comes out in a few days.
In a few days. Oh my gosh. I think I am so excited to hold that Dopey bib. I am so excited to just pretty much take on this challenge head on, with the challenge itself that I have, and knowing the challenge I have up ahead. It's like a trifecta of a challenge. So I feel like I'm looking forward to conquering this and saying, I will win. I'm going to beat this, and I'm going to get across the finish line, because there's more RunDisney to come. What I'm dealing with now just happened to fall into doping. So I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to get those 6 medals. And I think crossing on Sunday, that final finish line, that's going to be quite emotional. That's going to be, I think everybody runs through all the emotions. There's lots of tears. There's lots of laughing. There's lots of happiness. There's jumping for joy. I've already thought about, because I cry sometimes on the course in general, just I'm just so happy and just feeling all the feels. But I think coming around the corner, if I don't get picked up,
you will not get picked up. I know it. I can feel it. You're going to make it.
Yes. If I don't get picked up, which I won't, it's going to be quite the moment crossing that last finish line and saying, check, done.
Now,
hand me those last 3 medals.
Yes. Now, are you the type that in your mind, you're like, I'm going to dopey one and done, never going to do it again? Or are you like, I will leave the door open and see how it goes, see how you feel, maybe do another one?
So, Kristen, that is such a great question, because honestly, I have played with that a lot in my head, and I've also thought a lot about, and I think this is something to talk about. Dopey is a commitment. So injury or no injury, I think you have to go into doping knowing that it is such a commitment, and depending on what your goals are too for that commitment, and depending on the season of life that you're in and what you have going on around you, because that commitment can hinder other things that you may think that you want to do that you may not be able to do if you have a certain goal set in mind for that race. So when you're talking multiple long runs, especially leading up to the last 4 to 6 weeks, and you're talking about your short runs and your rest days, and you stuff to stretch and need your nutrition, it is such a commitment. So to do it every year, I think you have to just know what season of life you're in to do that. For me personally, in my season of life and what I'm experiencing right now, I am probably 99.9% confidence that this is a one and done. for me.
All right, everybody heard it. There is a 0.1% chance that she might change her mind.
0.1, because I don't want to be that person's like a never and always, but because you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
You just don't know. But I feel like for the commitment that it takes to do RunDisney and what it's worth to me to do again and again, and I think that's a personal, definitely somebody has to evaluate for themselves. Is this worth it for me to do again and again? What do I have going on in life? What does life mean to me? What are my rewards? What are my things that bring me joy? And if that's that for that person, that is great. But if it's somebody who's, trialing it out, trickling, trying to see just know it's such a commitment. And if it is a one and done, that's okay. And if you do say one and done and you change your mind, it's okay. And if you do commit to one and done, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's definitely what is your big picture in life of what you want. I know it's not my last RunDisney race. I may only run 5Ks after Princess. I'm not sure. I may do all challenges for the rest of what I'm allowed to do on Earth. But I think for Dopey, 0.1%.
0.1%. I love it. And that I think can also play so much into that mindset of the goal you were talking about earlier. Like if you say, okay, I've committed to this. This is my one time I'm going to do it. I need to give it my all, versus sometimes when you have that flexibility and that open set of like, I'm going to do it again next year, or no big thing, like I'm not too stressed about it, that can also impact how you train, how you race that day, all those kind of things too. So keeping that in mind, I think can be helpful. Like for me, I never thought I was going to do a half marathon ever in my entire life until I heard that you got to run through the castle. And I was like, oh, well, shit, now I have to do that. And then I went through it, and literally, I'll never forget, we were on that big stretch of highway, because I didn't realize that the castle was at the halfway point of the half until we were going into Magic Kingdom. I was like, wait a second, we're going to have a whole lot of miles after this. I thought that was going to be like the big finish or like close to it. And then we had that big long stretch of highway. And so much of that was mental for me. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, I don't know if I can make it through this never ending Florida highway right now. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, maybe I will do another one. Oh, that was awesome. So like sometimes that mindset of like, this is my one and done, it's going to help me push through. And then like you said, if you change your mind afterwards, that's okay. And say, hey, you know what? That was pretty cool. I do want to do another one. RunDisney,
exactly.
Hopefully will always be there.
Always be there. Absolutely. We've learned that, right? That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. So when we ran our first marathon in January 2020, it's a grit. It's a grit to run a marathon. It's a grit to run anything that you're not used to doing. So anytime you do something for the first time, you've got to put that mental grit in. So when we got to ride Tower of Terror, oh no, I'm sorry, this wasn't Marthon Weekend. This was Wine and Dine 2019. Oh my gosh, this was the half marathon. And can I just tell you, this alone, talk about adrenaline rush, because I remember what tank top I had on now in that moment. So it was that race, and we ran through Hollywood Studios, and I don't know, because I thought it was usually something like early when it's still dark, these benefits happen to, but I mean, gosh, it was pure daylight. We were in I can't remember, one of the last corrals, and run through Hollywood Studios, and there's Tower of Terror cast members, and they direct their arms, and we're like, are you serious? And they're like, go on. And we went on Tower of Terror at mile 10 of our half marathon, and it was great. And the adrenaline that they gave for the last 3 miles,
must have been amazing.
Our cart, it was amazing, because we're screaming through the queue, we're like trying to take video, we're like, wow, Tower of Terror, it's mile 13 half marathon. And we got on, and I think there may have been like 2 or 3 people that were not in the RunDisney race. So they're bombarded with all of this adrenaline and all this excitement and all these people with bibs. They're just screaming. And the point is, that moment got us through those 3 miles. That moment got us through about that next RunDisney race, got us excited, that full marathon in January. It's those things that like just don't happen outside of Disney.
Ugh, I can't even imagine. I've never had a spot in a race yet where you can ride a ride during a race. So I'm hoping for one of those in the future too.
Yes. Well, if you're doing Springtime Surprise, you'll get to do hopefully the 10 miler, right?
I only got into the 10K. Everything was sold out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I got into the 10K.
I heard that went pretty quick.
Yeah. I heard the Everest 5K went like in, I think they said less than 30 minutes, which is pretty wild. Hopefully the next time around, but.
Hopefully next time around. And it sounds like I would think that this would be back again for next year, especially as fast as this went. I kind of anticipated that was going to go quick. I'll be curious to see how that course goes, because I mean, are you going to get to ride Tower of Terror if it's the Tower of Terror 10 mile, So
or Everest at night?
Yes. Hopefully if it's back up. I would think it has to be back up for the race, right? From refurb.
I would hope so. If they do an Everest 5K at night, they bring it back and then can't ride it. That might not be ideal for everyone. So we'll see how that goes. Let's hop into our speed round of favorites, Run Disney edition. What is your favorite Run Disney race weekend?
Wine and Dine.
How come?
It is, I think it's such a fun weekend for, well, they just changed the theme to the villains, which I loved. They also includes the after party event on Sunday night, which is open to anyone. I know it's included in the ticket for those that are doing the half or the challenge, but anybody can go to it. And that's just super fun. And the way it's focused on just the theming of it. I just love that weekend, the time of year. I love it. It's definitely my favorite. Marthon Weekend's a close second, but that one's my favorite.
I love it. All right. Now we talked a little bit about medals earlier. Do you have a favorite Run Disney medal that you already have? Could be the look of it, could be the story of it, your first of something.
It's funny because I love them all. I love them all. They all have a story. I do love them all. My first marathon is just the best because it was my very first marathon. My first Run Disney Star Wars. I'm not like a ginormous Star Wars fan, but it still was my very first one. So, but the Wine and Dine ones, they're so cute and so fun. And then the virtual ones, like, oh my gosh, I have a Haunted Mansion virtual one from last year when I did the virtual series over the summer. Those were so fun.
Do you like hang them up or display them anywhere at your house?
There is, yes. I have a friend of mine made me a beautiful wooden frame. This is Every Mile is Magic. So all my medals are there. So it's great. I might have to get another one. Ask her, be like, we make me another because it's getting full so I can see all my medals. But
I love it. I love it.
She did such a good job. So yeah.
So how about your favorite resort to stay at for a race weekend?
Favorite resort to stay at. If I'm staying at a value resort, I usually stay at Pop just for the feasibility of a Skyliner. But if I can stay in a DVC, if I'm on top of it and ahead of time, my 11 months out, I will choose something like Boardwalk, something behind Epcot where I can be, or Riviera, where I can be behind the feasibility of just taking a stroll through Epcot, having some food and heading back to the resort. Yep. Those are definitely my top choices.
I am hoping that I can use my DVC for 2023 now that the dates are out for the race calendar. So I might be DMing you with some questions of like pro tips. How do I make sure I get in there? That's my goal.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll definitely chat.
All right. How about favorite either like merch or collectible item that you get? Like, is there something you get every race weekend at the expo or at the parks?
Yes. So I like to get a magnet, and I usually like to get, not all the time, just depending. Some weekends like Dopey, I will probably get to. This last one I did, but I like to get a magnet, one for my fridge and then one for the car. For this last one, I didn't do two. I just did the one, but Dopey, I will probably buy two of them just to have in my car for a while. It just makes me sad that the car magnets, and this is any car magnet, just Disney, they get weathered after a while. So I'm like, oh, it breaks my heart. So that's how I learned. I'm like, I need to get two if it's something I want to keep forever. So, but I definitely try to get a car magnet, and just depending on their clothing merch will depend on what I decide to purchase there. Something that's got to be unique and comfortable. I don't like to buy a lot of like the dated, they have so much there, but I try to get maybe one dated thing, but we do get those shirts that come with our registration. So I use that as part of, so where I find something like what I'm wearing today, which is just pretty much just a simple Run Disney that represents all of Run Disney, which I love, that I can use.
I love it. Now you said you have some favorite things for restaurants. So what is your favorite restaurant to eat at before a race?
So these are the ones that I think are just so delicious and great carb loads. Il Molino, Trattoria Al Forno, Tusker House. Those
Tusker House. Interesting.
Oh yeah. Their jasmine rice, their chicken. It's so good. Carrots are a simple vegetable that won't really mess with your gut too much. So get some vitamins there. But yeah, those are, and the bread at Tusker House, the bread at Trattoria, Il Molino, their pasta, really, really good. So those have definitely been a top three. Awesome. I like Terralina Crafted Italian. I think that one's really delicious too in Disney Springs.
Disney Springs. Okay.
That's another good Italian. So, but those are definitely my three favorites. So I already have those on the books for Marthon Weekend.
Now, how about after a race? Do you have places that you always go for like your celebratory dinner or lunch or breakfast?
Yes. Casey's Corner. Yes, give me all the cheese fries, all the extra cheese dipping sauce.
A lot of cheese post-race.
Yes, a lot of cheese post race. If I can get into Chef Art Smith or 50s prime time, I love to get some good fried chicken after the race, which I do have 50s prime time on my calendar for Marthon Weekend. I'm really excited. That's actually, I think, Sunday night. I'm going to be at 50s prime time to celebrate with some good old mama's fried chicken. And then desserts. Oh gosh, chocolate ice cream and Mickey cake pops. Give it all to me.
I am shocked that Topolino's was not in either of your before or after restaurants. I feel like I think of Topolino's and I think of you.
I know. I do love Topolino's. I love it very, very much. I think because it's such a hard one to get in that I usually just focus on all these others because at the end of the day, like I just need the pasta and the carbs. And so, yeah. And I think I focus more on Topolino's for like family experience or non-RunDisney. So, but it's still such a great because they're Italians authentic as well, all house made right there for you. Yeah. Which is so nice.
Delicious. All right, last speed round of favorite. What is your favorite way to celebrate after a race?
Well, there's definitely the traditional go to Magic Kingdom, take your medals with you and get your pictures.
Hear the clinking
with your medals
all over the park.
Hear the clinking of them and everybody telling you congratulations. For Wine and Dine Weekend with Villains, I took my medals to Epcot and I hung them on that fence right there by Japan, and that has Spaceship Earth right behind it. And it was great because the Beacon of Magic was behind it, lit up. I had the archway for Japan and I had my medals hanging down and I took a picture there and that made me happy. So just those moments right there, and having conversations is so great after it's all over. People like, so what did you run? And then we met somebody at Boathouse who she ran years ago and hadn't run again. And I think after our conversation, she was pretty fired up to sign up for another one and get back into it. So
I love it.
That alone, it's just, again, connections, meeting people and talking about those things that just bring joy to you and to them.
Oh, I love it. And my last question, my favorite question of all of these podcast episodes, do you have a favorite magic moment specifically with RunDisney?
I probably already gave it away with riding Tower of Terror. I do think that might have been, or crossing the marathon finish line that day in that 96-degree weather. That was magical, but I know that a lot of people who've crossed that line can feel that as well. But Tower of Terror, the energy that came with Tower of Terror, I don't know. That's never have I ridden a ride during a race. So that was pretty special. And if it can ever happen for everyone, and if you have that cushion of time, I am going to be cheering for you to take it and mark that on there because it will be no other that you'll have in your bucket of memories.
Amazing. Any last tips, tricks, bit of info that you want to share with everyone specifically around RunDisney before we wrap up?
Just when you get into RunDisney, if you decide to do your first race, if you're even thinking about it, go for it. And even if you start off small with the 5K, because it may sound small, but it's really big. Yeah. So make that part of your memory list and have such a good time with it. Because when you get on that course, like whatever preconceived notion you may think about running or racing, or quote unquote racing, it's really just getting from the start to the finish. It doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you do it. Take those preconceived notions out of your head, talk to your friends, and get excited and run your first RunDisney race and get that medal.
Oh, I love it. I am so excited to cheer you on. Marthon Weekend virtually, run into you at Princess, which is going to be so exciting. Where can everybody follow along on Instagram or anywhere else, keep track for Marthon Weekend and see how it all goes?
So I have an Instagram and the handle is called Trippin to Disney, TRIPPINTO Disney. Trippin to Disney. And so that's where you will find me. That's where I keep all of my scrapbook, if you will, my stories, my adventures there for RunDisney and anything I do when I go to Disney and my family. So that's where I'll be. I will share as much as I can, and I will definitely take on all the cheering and all the prayers. Dopey weekend.
Yes, we will send all the pixie dust. You're going to crush it. It's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to see the pictures of you with your medals and your cake pops on Main Street. It's going to be perfect.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Kristen. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see you at RunDisney.
Thanks so much for hanging out today. I hope you enjoyed our episode with Kristen talking all about RunDisney. Make sure you follow her and lots of other RunDisney runners and cheer them on both for this upcoming Walt Disney World Marthon Weekend, as well as the rest of our RunDisney races on the calendar. We have so much coming up. I'm really excited to be sharing my love of RunDisney, as well as all of these incredible stories of these amazing athletes who are also really passionate about RunDisney and all things Disney. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform and follow us on Instagram at Living the KG Life. And stick around. It's going to be great.